Hello everyone, and thanks for checking this video. This is Another Dominican presenting the results of his Ancestry DNA test. If you are familiar with this type of video, what I will going to do, I will try to predict how the results will come out before Ancestry DNA is done processing my saliva. So why don't we go about it, right? If you don't want to, listen to me talking about my family background, you are welcome to skip ahead to this part of the video and see the results before at this point if you would like to. But I really hope you are patient and bear with me for a couple of seconds while I do this. Okay, so before things like Ancestry DNA tests were available, if you wanted to know about your family history, the best recourse was to ask your parents or grandparents or any old folks around with memories to share with you and hope that they will remember. In my case, that was not very easy. My maternal grandmothers, they died before I was born, so they're not available to share information. And I did meet my paternal grandfather, but he died when I was very young and not interested in asking this type of questions, so nothing there. My maternal grandfather, that's the one I got to know the most. He was alive until I was in my teens, and although I do have some interest in the family history, he was not in the mood to talk about that. I mean, his wife died when very young. My grandmother, she died of tuberculosis. So she obviously didn't want to talk about the past. I had some uncles that are willing to share some information, so I talked to them and asked them about it. And so let's see what I have. So let's start with my mother's side of the family, and this is my mother here. And when it comes to her ancestry, and I don't know if you can see it here in this picture, but she's a light-skinned woman, mixed race, probably African and European ancestry. This is just a guess, of course, based on what I see. And I always assumed that her African ancestry came from her mother, my grandmother, side of the family, but that was just based on this picture that you see here, and which is the only one I had of her. She died, like I said, she died of tuberculosis in the 1940s when my mother was a toddler. So my mom does not have a good recollection of her. In this picture, my maternal grandmother, she looked black to me. I always that's where I assumed that my African ancestry came from. But turns out that was a mistake on my part. As you see in this picture, the little girl in her arm is my mom, which is very light skin. So this picture is not a good representation of how they look like. So I asked my mom and my uncles, and they say that my grandmother actually has white skin and wavy hair. So her mother was described as a white woman with green eyes, and there was also she also had a sister that was a redhead with freckles. So apparently the African ancestry in my mom does not come from her mother. So that only left my grandfather. So he was the like I said, he was the grandparent that I got to know the most, and he looks mostly white to me. But it turns out that his father was, yes, of a Spanish and French ancestry, but his mom was a black woman. So my maternal grandfather, who I always thought was a white guy, is actually half black. So it's interesting what you learn when you start asking questions. So it's important, if you have folks around that can answer questions, you ask them. And don't make assumptions, because apparently physical appearance doesn't count for much when it comes to determining somebody's ancestry. Okay, so let's see my father's side of the family. This one is easy. Here's my father, and these two are my grandparents, and as you can see, it's black all over. So I think that makes it easier to predict how my ancestry DNA result will come out, right? Well, at least the African side of the family tree, I predict that I will come out around 60 to 65% African ancestry. But what about the rest? Well, the Dominican Republic, where I'm from, it's like most countries in the Americas, we got immigrants from all over the place. Most of the after the African slave, most of the contribution to the gene pool come from Europe, but we also got immigrants from the Middle East, Asia, and North Africa. And there is also the native population. As you know, most of the native were killed at the earliest day, during the earliest days of the colonial period. But a few dozen survived and went into the mountains and in hiding. And they are they're still part of their ancestry in our gene pool. Based on a study that was done in 2015 by National Geographic and two universities, it was determined that the average Dominican has about 3.6% Native American DNA, which is really low compared to the other countries in the region like Mexico, Venezuela, or Colombia. But there is some, not significant. So it's probably something like that. Something will come out in my test, probably a little bit. So this prediction business is not very easy when you don't have all the facts. So it's a good thing that we have things like Ancestry DNA available that you can use to get more information. But based on this, I'll predict that, like I said, that I will come out between 60 and 65% African DNA and 40 to 35% some other DNA. That's the only way I can put it. So let's just wait on a few weeks. Well, I will wait a few weeks. You will see it in a few seconds. And let's see what they had to say about my results. See you in 1, 2, 3, go. Hello and welcome back to those of you who were patient enough to watch me talk about my family background and my prediction about what will come out in my Ancestry DNA result. My official results arrived and it only took about a month since I sent them, and I won't make you wait a lot. Here they are. Now, how's that for diversity? It looks like my ancestry is all over the place, although based on what we know about the people from the Dominican Republic, this is a very average DNA profile. But still there are a couple of surprises that I found over here. As expected, I have some ancestry in the Iberian Peninsula, which is where Spain and Portugal are located, and also in Sub-Saharan Africa. No surprise there. The Dominican Republic was a colony of Spain for over 300 years, and over the years it received a number of people, immigrants from Spain, not as much as other countries like Argentina or Mexico, but enough to basically they are a significant, to form a significant part of the DNA mix in the country. But in fact, the region with the largest contribution to my DNA is Sub-Saharan Africa. And if you add up all these countries that you see here, you will see that 48% of my DNA come from that region. The island of Hispaniola, which is occupied by Haiti and the Dominican Republic, was in fact where the slave trade started in the Americas. And in fact, the first slave rebellions and the first time that they fought against their masters happened there. So people of African ancestry have a long history in the Dominican Republic. I was a little bit surprised that it was less than 50% of my DNA coming from Sub-Saharan Africa. As I thought it was going to be higher based only on how my parents look. But you know, as I said earlier, you cannot go by physical appearance to try to determine DNA. Is not very reliable. Somebody who looks white could have African ancestry and vice versa, and that's probably what happened. Now, this big rig here really caught me by surprise. totally unexpectedly. It turns out that I have some ancestry in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. I honestly can't explain that. All I can say is that apparently the stories about my great aunt having red hair and freckles appears to be true. Here's something interesting as well. I have 8% native ancestry, which is in the high end of what is common in the Dominican Republic. As you know, most of the native were exterminated at the beginning of the colonial period, and the average DNA in mix in the Dominican Republic is about 3.6%. Well, that's an average. Some people have more, like me, obviously. Others have less, and others have none. It all also depends on what part of the country you're from. I'm from the city of Santiago, which is in the north central part of the country, near the mountains where the native escaped after the Spanish finally left them alone. Now, this other entry here didn't come as a surprise, as I have a theory about that that require me to tell you a little bit more about me. So my last name is Jorge, which is Spanish for George, and it's not usually a surname, but I didn't know that until I got out of the country and went to live in Puerto Rico, and that people started telling me, oh, that Jorge is not really a last name. So I started asking around, trying to find out about the origins of Jorge as a surname, and I heard a theory that people from Lebanon who immigrated to the Dominican Republic at the end of the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th. They were Christians, and they were escaping persecution by the majority Muslim population in the country. So when they arrive in the Americas, they will adopt Hispanics names to try to better fit among the local population. And one of the names that they adopted was Jorge. Okay, so that's a possible explanation, but the thing is, as you see here, neither Papa Jorge or Grandpa Jorge look Lebanese to me. They're black. But again, like I said, you cannot go by physical appearance. It may happen that we have some Lebanese in our family background on my father's side of the family, and the fact that my father and grandfather are black doesn't mean that they cannot have that ancestry. Is possible explanation. It's kind of like rings true, but it's the most plausible, but I don't know. Well, rounding up the mix, there is about 1% Scandinavian and 1% European Jewish. I don't know if that European Jewish is what they call Ashkenazi. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I never heard that word being pronounced, so I don't know if Ashkenazi is the right way to say it. But it's very common in Latin America, and I don't know if maybe Ancestry DNA decided to change from from Ashkenazi to European Jews. I don't know if that's what they mean, but this is not very unusual to have some Jewish DNA if you're from Latin America. Well, and basically that's all there is. I mean, this has really been an amazing experience for me, a learning experience, and I hope it has been for you. I thank you for taking your valuable time, to watch this amateur video, because I'm not an expert in this. I really would like to, if you have something else to add, you have some information to communicate, or simply comment, or you have a question, please, there are the comments over there, write up. And thank you again for watching this video. I hope you really find it as interesting as I found the whole experience. Bye.